He's not coming back. The moon hung high above the temple roof, round and silent, like a lantern suspended in the sky. A gentle breeze stirred the bamboo surrounding the garden, and each leaf whispered a truth that words could never fully express. In a small cabin beside the pond lived Master Kaysen, an elderly monk known for his deep serenity and the stories he shared with the young ones when night began to fall. That evening, as incense drifted in slow, curling spirals, a disciple approached, his eyes clouded with nostalgia. "Master," he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about what I've lost, about what's gone, about what's never coming back." Kaysen nodded gently, unsurprised, almost as if he had been expecting those very words. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his gaze to the moon's reflection shimmering on the still surface of the pond. There, the moon looked even more perfect, though it was only a reflection. "Come," the master said after a while. "Sit with me. Tonight, I'll tell you a story that can only be heard when the heart is ready to let go." The disciple obeyed, folding his legs over the tatami mat as the breeze softly touched his face. The master closed his eyes and began to speak, not with a loud voice, but with the quietude of one who has learned to listen to silence. "There was once a solitary tree atop a quiet hill. There was once a solitary tree atop a quiet hill," Master Kaysen began. "For many years, that tree shared its branches with a bird adorned in blue feathers. Each morning, the bird would sing a gentle song, and each evening it would return to perch on the same branch, as if time itself could not touch their friendship. The tree grew used to its presence. Even on rainy days or during cold nights, it would wait for the bird's return. It never spoke, trees do not speak. But in its sap, in the way its leaves rustled when the bird arrived, there was a quiet joy hidden deep within. Then one day, without warning, the bird did not come back. Days passed, then weeks, then seasons. Still, the tree continued to stretch out its favorite branch, the one the bird always used, waiting with the patience of the earth. But the bird never returned. At first, the tree refused to believe it. Each sunset, its branches drooped with sorrow. It looked toward the sky, asking with its stillness what it could not say. "Why? Where are you? When will you come back?" But no answer came, and so the tree remained, until something inside it began to change. "What changed, Master?" the disciple asked in a whisper. Kaysen smiled gently, as if he had known the question would come. "You'll understand soon enough. But first, let us listen to how the story unfolds." "At first," Master Kaysen continued, "the tree resisted the emptiness. It felt as though something had been torn from it, as if that branch the bird once favored was now incomplete. Sadness caused some of its leaves to wither before their time. The sap flowed slower, heavier. All of its being seemed to lean toward the absence. But time, which waits for no one, kept moving forward. One morning, as the dew sparkled on its leaves like tiny pearls of light, the tree noticed something different. It wasn't that the bird had returned. No, it was something else. The wind. A wind it had never quite felt this way before. It slipped through its branches with a new softness, almost playful. And as it moved them, it spoke. Not with words, but with presence. For the first time, the tree did not feel pain when it looked at its empty branch. Felt space. A space it had once refused to see. It was no longer a void, it was a new way of being. That was when the tree understood, the master said softly, that the bird was not coming back, and that was okay. The disciple took a deep breath, letting the words fall into him like gentle drops. Kaysen looked at him with tenderness, but did not disturb the silence that followed. Because in that silence, something was beginning to grow. Master Kaysen turned his gaze back to the pond. The moon's reflection still floated there, though a gentle ripple now distorted it. And yet it was still the moon. "The tree," he said softly, "learned to bloom again, no longer to attract the bird, nor to decorate its waiting. It bloomed simply because it was its nature. Each new bud was a gesture of acceptance. Each falling leaf in autumn, an act of surrender. And in spring, when other birds flew nearby, the tree did not lean toward them with hope. It let them pass. It greeted them with its shade, blessed them with its silence, but it did not hold on." "Did it never feel sadness again?" the disciple asked. "Of course it did," the master replied with a serene smile. "Sometimes, on cloudy days, the tree would remember the blue song, but instead of aching for what was gone, it gave thanks for having heard it. It understood that not everything that comes is meant to stay, and not everything that leaves does so without leaving a mark." The disciple bowed his head, and for the first time it wasn't out of sorrow, but relief. He felt something inside him gently loosen, as if an invisible knot had finally been untied. The silence in the garden was no longer an echo of loss. It was open space, like the empty branch of that tree. The night moved slowly, as if it were in no hurry. The cicadas had gone quiet, and the scent of lotus began to awaken beside the still waters of the pond. Master Kaysen leaned gently against the wooden pillar, and his words drifted like leaves carried by the current. As time passed, the tree stopped asking why the bird had left. It no longer wondered what might have been if things had turned out differently. It no longer searched the sky for signs, nor read the creaking of its branches as omens of return. Simply lived. And that was when something curious happened. One day, an old traveler sat beneath its shade. He stayed there for hours in silence, eyes closed, as if listening to a music only he could hear. When he rose to leave, he touched the tree's trunk and whispered, "Thank you for being as you are." The tree didn't respond. Trees don't speak. But from one of its high branches, a flower gently fell to the earth. It was its way of smiling. Kaysen closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the disciple to feel the story not just with his ears, but with his heart. Then, in a soft voice, he added, "Sometimes what leaves is not meant to return, because its departure is the beginning of something deeper, something that has no name yet." The disciple remained silent. Something warm was spreading through his chest, like an ember that didn't burn, but gently touched him from within. It wasn't joy nor sadness. It was a formless calm, as if he had finally allowed himself to stop holding on to what could no longer be. "Master," he whispered, "does letting go mean accepting that he's not coming back?" Kaysen looked at him with deep tenderness. He nodded slowly. "Letting go doesn't mean forgetting," he replied. "It means honoring what was without chaining it to the present. It means saying thank you and allowing it to leave with dignity." They sat in silence together, like two trees in the same breeze. Then the master spoke again, his voice even softer. The tree was never the same, but it became wiser. And though its favorite branch remained empty forever, new branches grew. And on those branches landed butterflies, and rain, and sunshine, and birds that never stayed, but no longer hurt when they left. The disciple closed his eyes. He understood now that not all pain arrives to be solved. Some pain comes only to teach us how to make space in the soul, how to be whole, even with what's missing. And that sometimes, when we truly accept that something is never coming back, a peace arises that we've never known before, peace we don't ask for, but receive. The disciple inhaled slowly, letting the night air fill his lungs. There was no more hurry, no more resistance, only a quiet nod from within, like a river that, after pushing against a stone, finally flows around it without ceasing to be a river. "Master," he whispered, "I think I've been holding on to a memory as if it were a promise. But it wasn't. It was just a moment that was meant to end." Kaysen nodded with calm. Many confuse permanence with love. But true love doesn't need to stay to have been real. Some presences come only to show you a part of yourself. And then they leave. Like a bird's song, like the light of dawn. "And still," the disciple said, looking up at the sky, "they're beautiful." Kaysen smiled. In his eyes lived centuries of patience. Exactly. Beauty doesn't always lie in what lasts, but in what it awakens within us. And sometimes, when we no longer expect something to return, a new kind of life begins to bloom. The disciple bowed his head, not in sorrow but in gratitude. At last he understood. What had gone was not lost. It lived within him, like the bird's song echoing through the leaves. And that night, for the first time in a long while, he slept in peace. Dawn slipped over the temple like a gentle caress. The first rays of sunlight painted the rooftops in gold, and the lotus flowers slowly began to open, as if waking from a long, silent dream. The disciple stepped into the garden, still feeling the story quietly blooming inside his chest. Everything looked the same, and yet, something within him had shifted. He stopped beneath a cherry tree, just beginning to blossom. He watched as a single petal drifted down, softly, without resistance. It did not fight the wind. It did not beg to stay. Simply let go. And in that gesture, he found the teaching. He's not coming back. He whispered to himself, and that is okay. He no longer looked back seeking answers. He now walked forward, with silence and reverence for what had been. Not because he had forgotten, but because he had finally made it part of him. Like an invisible root, holding up his new way of blooming. From a distance, Master Kaysen watched him with a quiet smile. He knew not all lessons need words. Some only need time, and the willingness to let go. And so, as the sun rose and life moved on, the disciple took a deep breath, closed his eyes for a moment, and kept walking, because not everything returns, but everything leaves something behind, and sometimes what remains is more than enough. The Willow and the Storm. Once upon a time, in a valley cradled by gentle mountains and veiled in constant mist, there lived a young man named Haru. He resided in a small temple by the river, where time flowed as slowly as the leaves drifting along the current. His master, an old man with a white beard and a voice as soft as the wind, guided him in the ways of Zen. Haru was strong and determined. He held tightly to everything, his goals, his thoughts, even his emotions. He believed true strength meant never yielding, standing firm like a rock against the world. One evening, as the wind whispered through the trees, the master called him into the garden. "Haru," the elder said gently, "look at the great willow by the river." The young man looked. The tree's branches swayed with the breeze, bending gracefully but never breaking. "Do you see it?" the master continued. "That is true strength, not in resisting, but in knowing when to yield." Haru furrowed his brow, not fully understanding. Yet something within him stirred, as if a small seed had just begun to sprout. That night, Haru couldn't sleep. The master's words danced in his mind like leaves caught in the wind. True strength lies in yielding. But how could that be true? Since childhood, he had been taught never to give up, to endure, to hold everything tightly with clenched hands. At dawn, he quietly stepped into the garden. The willow was still there, calm and serene, bending its branches toward the water as if listening to the river's deepest secrets. Haru sat before it and watched. "How can you be so weak and so strong at the same time?" he whispered to the tree. The wind answered, gently brushing his face. It wasn't a reply in words, but a feeling. The willow did not fight the wind. It moved with it. It didn't resist change, it adapted. Haru closed his eyes. For the first time in a long while, he didn't try to control his breath or his thoughts. He simply let go. And in that moment, he felt an unfamiliar peace. As if by letting go, something inside him had blossomed open. In the days that followed, Haru watched closely everything he had once overlooked. He noticed how the river didn't stop at the stones but gracefully flowed around them. How the clouds didn't fight against the sky but drifted without resistance. How even the leaves, as they fell, didn't mourn. They simply danced down to the ground. One afternoon, the master handed him a clay pot filled with water. "Carry this up the hill without spilling a single drop," he instructed. Haru took the pot with both hands, gripping it tightly. Step by step, he climbed, his body stiff and every movement cautious. When he reached the top, the water was shaking, restless. He had managed not to spill it, but his body felt tense, exhausted, nearly breaking. The master watched silently. Then, the next day, he asked Haru to do it again. But this time, Haru held the pot calmly, not fighting the trembling of his hands nor the wind. He walked gently, letting his body flow with the moment. When he reached the top, the water was still, and so was he. In the days that followed, Haru paid close attention to everything he had once ignored. He watched how the river didn't stop at the stones but gracefully flowed around them. How the clouds didn't fight against the sky but drifted without resistance. How even the leaves, as they fell, didn't lament. They simply danced their way to the ground. One afternoon, the master handed him a clay pot filled with water. "Carry it up the hill without spilling a single drop," he instructed. Haru took the pot with both hands, gripping it tightly. Step by step, he climbed, his body stiff and every movement cautious. When he reached the top, the water was trembling, restless. He had managed not to spill it, but his body felt tense, exhausted, almost breaking. The master watched silently. Then, the next day, he asked Haru to do it again. But this time, Haru didn't hold the pot tightly, he held it calmly. He didn't fight the trembling of his hands or the wind. He simply walked gently, letting his body flow with the moment. When he reached the top, the water was peaceful, and so was he. In the days that followed, Haru began to notice all the things he had once overlooked. He saw how the river didn't stop at the stones but gracefully flowed around them. How the clouds didn't struggle against the sky but drifted without resistance. How even the leaves, as they fell, didn't mourn. They simply danced down to the earth. One afternoon, the master handed him a clay pot filled with water. "Carry it up the hill without spilling a single drop," he instructed. Haru took the pot with both hands, gripping it tightly. Step by step, he climbed, his body stiff, careful with every movement. When he reached the top, the water was trembling and restless. He hadn't spilled a drop, but his body felt tense, drained, almost ready to break. The master watched silently. The next day, he asked Haru to do it again. But this time, Haru held the pot calmly, not fighting the shaking of his hands or the wind. He simply walked gently, letting his body move with the moment. When he reached the top, the water was calm, and so was he. The days passed with the calm of a long sigh. Haru no longer rushed to understand life, nor did he tense his body as before. He had begun to walk more slowly, to listen to the sounds of the forest, to feel the sun on his skin without wishing it were warmer or cooler. He simply was. One morning, while sweeping dry leaves from the temple path, a butterfly landed on the edge of his broom. Haru paused. He watched it closely. Its wings were fragile, translucent. Yet there it was, floating with a grace no effort could ever teach. It didn't fight the wind, it used it. It didn't cling to anything, and that's why it reached everywhere. In that moment, Haru understood something deep. Lightness is not weakness. Softness is not lack of power. The butterfly, like the willow, like the river, were strong precisely because they knew how to let go. That day, Haru stopped fighting his thoughts. Instead of pushing them away, he let them pass by, like clouds that come and go. And in doing so, he felt stronger than ever before. One night, a fierce storm swept over the valley. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain pounded the temple roofs like thousands of tiny drums. Haru rose silently and walked to the garden, where the old willow bent gracefully beneath the sky's fury. The tree did not resist. Its branches curved, its trunk swayed, but it did not break. The master appeared beside him, wrapped in his cloak, saying nothing. Together they watched in silence. "Do you see?" the elder finally said. "The rigid trees will fall tonight, but the willow will live, not because it's the strongest, but because it knows how to yield." Haru closed his eyes beneath the rain. Inside, he too felt a storm dissolving. Old demands, ancient fears, thoughts hard as stone were loosening. Not because he defeated them, but because he no longer clung to them. Letting go was not falling. It was floating, and amid the storm's roar, he felt calm. At dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was still covered with soft clouds, and the air smelled of fresh earth. Haru stepped into the garden barefoot. Each step on the mud reminded him he was alive, present. Here, the willow still stood. Wet, yes, bent a little, but whole, wiser than the day before. The young man sat in its shade and took a deep breath. He no longer felt the need to control, to have answers for everything, to carry what no longer belonged to him. He finally understood that letting go was not giving up. It was trusting. It was making room for what's new. It was allowing life, like the river, to follow its natural course. "Thank you," he whispered, unsure if he was speaking to the tree, the master, the wind, or himself. And there, in that deep silence where nothing more needed to be said, he understood the greatest lesson. Letting go is strength, and the greatest strength is the one that doesn't need to force itself. Keep it simple. High on a gentle grassy hill lived an old monk named Soren. His little cabin was made of weathered wood with a roof woven from leaves. He owned very few things: a bowl, a teapot, a sleeping mat, and a bell that chimed softly in the wind. Every morning, Soren would go outside to watch the sunrise. He did nothing else. He simply observed as the sun slowly rose over the mountains, as if the day was in a hurry to wake. But he was not. "Keep it simple," he would whisper, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. "Life already knows how to bloom. It doesn't need you to push it." Then he would take a deep breath and smile. One day, a young traveler arrived at Soren's cabin, tired and overwhelmed. "Master," he said, "my mind is full of worries. I want to do many things, but everything feels complicated and heavy. How can I find peace?" Soren looked at him calmly and replied, "Do you see that stream flowing down there?" He pointed slowly. It never tries to rush or carry stones. It just flows, and that's why it always reaches the river. The young man frowned, not fully understanding. Keep it simple, Soren repeated. Like the stream, don't fight against who you are or what you feel. Let life take its course. Don't make the simple complicated. The young traveler took a deep breath, gazing at the clear water. That night, the young traveler lay down on the mat beside the monk. Together, they watched the stars twinkle in the dark sky, little lights that didn't need anything else to shine. Soren broke the silence with a gentle voice. Sometimes we think to be happy we must do great things, have a lot, or change the world. But true happiness isn't found in complexity. It's found in simplicity. The young man closed his eyes and listened to the wind rustling through the leaves. For the first time in days, his mind began to feel calm. Keep it simple, he whispered. No more, no less. Upon waking, the young traveler decided to put Soren's simple teaching into practice. Instead of letting his mind fill with endless lists and racing thoughts, he began by focusing on one thing at a time. His breath, each step he took, the warmth of the sun on his skin. Every action, no matter how small, became a conscious and peaceful act. Walking was more than movement. It was an intimate connection with the earth. Breathing was no longer just a need. It was a gift that filled his body with calm. He realized that by not rushing or trying to solve everything all at once, his mind grew serene. The worries that once felt so heavy now drifted like soft clouds, floating away without a trace. It's as if life has become lighter, he thought quietly, watching a butterfly flutter nearby. Everything seems less complicated simply because I stopped complicating it myself. From a distance, Soren watched with a peaceful smile, knowing the young man was beginning to understand a deep and simple truth. As the days passed, the young traveler understood that keeping it simple didn't mean giving up his responsibilities or dreams. Instead, it meant letting go of what wasn't essential and only made his path more complicated. He stopped carrying the weight of others' expectations, trying to control every outcome, and living trapped by the fear of making mistakes. Instead, he chose to focus on what was right in front of him, what he could do in the present, without letting his mind wander down uncertain paths. Every task, no matter how small, took on new meaning. Everyday life became clear and light, as if a heavy, invisible burden had disappeared. Life is simple when you accept what is, he told himself, watching the clear afternoon sky. You just have to learn not to get tangled up in what you cannot change. And so, the young man walked the path of simplicity, feeling that little by little, step by step, he found a space of freedom and peace within himself. One afternoon, as the sun began to set and the sky filled with golden and pink hues, the young traveler sat again beside Soren at the cabin's doorstep. The air was cool and gentle, and the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze created a peaceful melody. "Master," the young man said, his eyes a mix of worry and hope. "Sometimes life feels too chaotic, like a flooded river I can't control. How can I remember to keep things simple when everything around me seems so complicated and fast?" Soren looked at him with calm eyes and slowly pointed to a nearby branch. The branch swayed gently, its leaves dancing in the wind without struggle or resistance. "Watch the branch," he said softly. "It doesn't try to hold back the wind or stop it. It simply lets itself be rocked. It doesn't fight the current, but moves with it, adapting to every change without losing its essence." The young man followed the branch's movement, feeling the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. "That's how you must be," the monk continued. "When life feels complicated, don't cling or try to control everything. Don't fight the natural flow of things. Let yourself be carried calmly, like the branch swaying in the wind. Keep it simple, Soren repeated with a peaceful smile. Simplicity isn't the absence of movement, it's harmony with it. The young traveler took a deep breath, feeling a new peace, as if he had found an answer not with his mind, but with his heart. That night, before falling asleep, the young traveler lay down on the mat inside the cabin. He closed his eyes and let his mind settle. In his dreams, he became a light leaf floating on the clear water of a stream. There was no rush, no weight or tension, only the gentle flow of the water rocking him with tenderness and trust. The leaf didn't fight the current or try to choose its path. It simply surrendered to the journey, allowing every turn and swirl to carry it where it needed to go. In that dream, the young man felt a deep freedom, a sense of being whole without needing to add or take away anything. When he woke, that peace stayed with him like a hidden treasure in his chest. His worries no longer seemed like insurmountable mountains, but small waves he could calmly cross. "Keep it simple," he whispered to himself, a smile lighting up his face. "I need nothing more than the present moment, right here and now. In that simplicity, I find the strength and freedom I was searching for." The young man understood that true wisdom isn't in complicating life, but in embracing simplicity with love and acceptance. The days passed, and the young man slowly transformed. He no longer searched for complicated answers or drowned in doubts. He learned to live simply, accepting what came and letting go of what left. Before leaving, he sat one last time with Soren in the wooden cabin, beneath a sky painted in shades of orange and blue. "Thank you, Master," he said calmly. "Now I know life doesn't have to be hard to be meaningful. I just need to be like the stream, the branch, and the leaf, simple, flexible, and at peace." Soren smiled and added, "Always remember that simplicity is the path that leads to the heart. When the mind quiets and life feels light, true freedom is found." The young man took a deep breath, feeling an open space in his chest, like a temple without walls. And so, with the soft light of dusk, they sat in silence, reminded that sometimes the deepest truths are found in the simplest things. The value of time. In a small village, nestled among gentle mountains and peaceful rivers, lived a wise old man named Tao. Every evening, as the sun began to say goodbye, the village children would gather around him to listen to his stories. One night, as the moon shyly appeared in the sky, Tao spoke in a calm voice. "Time is like this flowing river," he said, pointing to the slowly moving water. "We cannot stop it, nor rush it. We can only learn to navigate its current." The children watched the river quietly, feeling the soft breeze on their faces, and little by little, their eyes began to close. Tao continued, his voice low and steady, like the whisper of the wind through the leaves. "Time, dear children, is neither an enemy nor a thief. It is not something to fear or rush. It is a silent companion walking with us, moment by moment. Sometimes it feels like it moves quickly, and other times it pauses to watch us." The old man looked at each child with a gentle smile and went on. "Imagine a seed buried in the earth. No matter how much we wish for a tree to grow right away, the seed needs its own time to open, to seek the light, and to strengthen its roots. If we try to hurry it, we might harm it, and the tree would never grow strong." The children breathed deeply, feeling the calm of the moment wrap around them, as the stars began to shine softly above their heads. Tao paused and gazed toward the horizon, where the sky was painted a deep blue sprinkled with tiny lights that seemed to dance. "Time, children," he said softly, "is not measured only in hours or minutes. It's felt in every little moment, in shared laughter, in the breeze that brushes your face, in the gentle heartbeat when we pause to listen. He lowered his gaze to his own wrinkled hands and continued, "Each moment is an invisible gift. Sometimes we want to catch time, rush it to arrive sooner, to finish faster, to reach our goals. But what happens if we forget to enjoy the journey? If we don't learn to savor the stillness that lies between one second and the next?" The children, sitting quietly, felt their bodies relax more, as if the earth itself was gently holding them. "Many years ago," Tao said, "when I was young and hurried, I tried to live fast, to run without rest. But the river taught me that when I rush, I only stir the water and lose its clarity. That's when I learned to flow with time, to let each moment be like a leaf slowly falling into the river, soft and without resistance." The wind played with dry leaves around him, and Tao took some in his hands, showing how they floated effortlessly. "It's not time that we lack," he continued, "but presence. When we are here, truly here, time becomes abundant, because each moment holds all we need." The children, their eyelids heavy now, felt a deep calm growing inside them, a space where time seemed to pause and whisper that everything was all right. Tao took a deep breath and looked at the children with tenderness. "Imagine time as a garden. If we rush without stopping, we only trample the flowers without seeing their beauty. But if we walk slowly, with care, we discover that each flower has its own color, its own scent, its own secret." He pointed toward the nearby forest, where trees stood calm under the silver light of the moon. "In this garden, every moment has its season. There is time to plant, time to grow, time to rest, and time to bloom. And though sometimes we don't understand why some seasons feel long or difficult, each one is necessary for the garden of our life to be whole and beautiful." Tao paused, letting silence fill the air, broken only by the gentle murmur of the river and the distant call of an owl. "When we learn to respect time," he said softly, "we stop fighting the inevitable. Then, anxiety dissolves like morning mist, and a deep peace appears, a trust that everything will arrive at just the right moment." The children, nearly asleep now, listened as if each word were a lullaby, their breaths slow and calm. "Remember," Tao concluded, "the value of time isn't in how much we have, but in how we live it. One second lived with care and love is more precious than 1,000 rushed hours without presence." With that final thought, Tao smiled as the night wrapped everyone in its cloak of calm and serenity. The old man Tao gently leaned against the smooth stone by the river and, with a voice almost whispering, continued, "Time also teaches us patience. There are moments in life when everything seems to stop, when answers don't come, and the path feels uncertain. In those moments, we must trust and be patient, because like the river, time always knows how to find its way to the sea." The children, their eyes half closed, seemed to float between wakefulness and sleep, wrapped in the melody of his words. When we are patient with time, we learn to listen, not with our ears, but with our hearts. And in doing so, we discover that time doesn't just pass. It also gives us moments of growth, learning, and love. Tao closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in the fresh scent of the night. "Remember, little ones, that although we cannot see or touch time, it is always present, like the air we breathe. And every moment lived with calm and attention is a moment in which we truly live." A gentle breeze swept through the place, caressing the children's faces, who were now almost asleep, swaying with the whisper of the river. Tao slowly opened his eyes and gazed at the little figures dozing around him. "There's one more thing I want to share," he whispered gently. "Sometimes we feel like time is slipping away, like sand running through our fingers. But that only happens when we forget to live in the present, when our minds get lost in memories or worries. The old man raised a hand and slowly let a dry leaf fall onto the river's surface. Look how this leaf floats without hurry, carried by the current. It doesn't fight the water or try to rush ahead. Simply flows, trusting. That's how we must learn to be with time. Flowing without resistance, without fear, accepting each moment as it is. The children, nearly asleep now, felt a warm peace spread through their bodies, like a soft blanket wrapping around them. To live time with courage, Tao concluded, is to learn to be here, now with calm and love. Only then does time become a friend who walks beside us and teaches us. The night moved on, and the moon shone high, softly lighting each peaceful child's face as sleep slowly embraced them. Tao's voice grew even softer, like a distant echo in the quiet night. Before you close your eyes completely, I want you to remember something important. Time is not measured by clocks or the rush of the world. True time is found in the calm of your breath, in the steady beating of your heart, in the connection with life that is always here and now. The children, cradled by the gentle darkness, breathed deeply, feeling each word like a soothing balm. If you ever feel lost or restless, pause for a moment and breathe. Feel the time inside you slow and steady. In that moment, you will discover that you don't need to run or hurry. Time holds you, guides you, and walks with you. Tao smiled tenderly as the stars twinkled calmly above their heads. The true value of time is knowing that every moment is unique and precious. And by living with attention, we build a life full of peace, love, and wisdom. With one last gentle sigh, Tao fell silent, while the children surrendered to deep, peaceful sleep, drifting along the tranquil river of time. The night grew quieter, and the river continued its slow course, reflecting the silver light of the moon. Tao, with a voice barely audible, whispered so only the wind could hear. Always remember, little travelers of time, that every second is a gift that never returns. It's not about rushing or gathering hours, but about embracing each moment with love and presence. The old man slowly closed his eyes, letting the peace he had planted in his listeners grow silently, like a seed germinating beneath the earth. Now let's sleep gently wrap around you, he said, and may time carry you on its calm current toward a deep and radiant rest. The children, already asleep, floated in a sea of calm, while the moon, like a silent lighthouse, watched over their dreams. And so, in the stillness of the night, the value of time became an eternal whisper, inviting everyone to simply live the now. Just passing through, in a quiet corner of the mountains, where even the wind dared only to whisper, lived an old monk named Etsu. His wooden hut, surrounded by cherry trees, seemed to float outside of time, as if the world had forgotten it existed. Each morning, upon opening his eyes, Etsu would softly repeat a single phrase, "We're just passing through." No one truly knew what he meant. Some saw it as a warning, others as a blessing. But for Etsu, it was a truth as simple as the murmur of a stream or the drifting of a cloud. Etsu never rushed. He walked barefoot among the fallen leaves, took a deep breath before speaking, and smiled at the birds as if they were old friends. He had learned that the world didn't need to be fully understood, only breathed in. One day, as he swept the path in front of his hut, a young girl approached. Her name was Hannah, and she had climbed up alone from the village below, carrying a question that wouldn't let her sleep. "Why does everything have to change, master?" she asked, her eyes wide like the moon. Etsu let the silence answer first. Then, he offered her a cup of tea and invited her to sit beside the fire. Everything changes, little one, because nothing belongs to us. Not the seasons, not our bodies, not even our thoughts. Like the cherry blossoms, we are here just for a moment, and then we move on. Hannah looked at him, puzzled, but said nothing. The fire crackled gently, and the scent of tea filled the room like an invisible caress. But what if I don't want something to change? She whispered at last. Etsu smiled, gazing at the shadows dancing on the walls. Then hold it with all your heart, and when the time comes, let it go with the same tenderness. Because Hannah, we're just passing through. The girl remained silent for a long while, as if trying to catch the monk's words before the wind could carry them away. Outside, the afternoon was slowly yielding to twilight, and the cherry trees were shedding their petals like falling dreams. What if I forget to let go, master? Hannah whispered, a hint of sadness in her voice. Etsu cupped his bowl of tea in his hands and gazed into it, as if reading a poem written in the rising steam. Sometimes, forgetting is also part of the path. There is no fault in holding on with love. What matters is remembering that everything that comes will one day go. Hannah lowered her eyes. Her heart didn't fully understand yet, but there was a strange peace in his words, like a soft lullaby beneath a rising moon. So, I shouldn't be afraid of losing? Don't fear loss, little one, Etsu replied. Fear only not having lived with an open heart while it was with you. The last light of day slipped between the branches. The fire crackled slowly, and their breaths grew more gentle, as if the entire world was preparing to fall asleep too. Etsu closed his eyes for a moment and said, when you understand we're just passing through, you stop running. You walk more slowly. You're more grateful, and every moment becomes sacred. Hannah looked at him with new eyes. The fear was still there, yes, but now wrapped in a soft blanket of understanding. That night, Hannah stayed in the master's cabin. The wind brushed softly against the wooden walls, and the distant call of an owl marked the rhythm of the night. On a mat beside the fire, the girl rested, wrapped in a blanket woven with threads of time. Before closing her eyes, her thoughts wandered like leaves drifting down a river. She thought of her mother, her old dog, the flower that had withered in her garden. Everything she had loved now seemed more fragile, more fleeting, and somehow more radiant. Etsu, seated in lotus position by the window, gazed at the moon. He did not speak, nor move a single muscle, yet his presence filled the room with the calm of someone who has made peace with everything. Master, Hannah said softly, her eyes still open, have you ever wanted to hold on to something forever? Etsu didn't answer right away. Only the whisper of crickets filled the space between them. Finally, in a voice that seemed to rise from the depths of his chest, he replied, yes, many times. I wanted to keep a sunrise, the smell of freshly cooked rice, a smile, but all of it passed. And then I understood when I held on, it hurt. But when I honored it, even as it left, it remained within me. Hannah nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the words settle in her heart like a song she already knew. And how do you honor what's leaving? Etsu turned to look at her, and with infinite gentleness said, by being present, by giving thanks, by letting go without closing your eyes. The girl then closed hers, not out of fear, but from rest, and in that surrender, something within her began to understand. The night moved with gentle steps, as if careful not to wake anyone. Outside, the trees whispered ancient secrets, and the moon drifted slowly across the sky, watching over the world with tenderness. Hannah slept deeply, and in her dreams, a garden appeared. She walked barefoot across the warm grass, surrounded by butterflies and clouds floating just above the ground. Each flower she reached for dissolved into light at her touch. And yet, she felt no sadness, only a quiet sense of wonder. From afar, Master Etsu watched her, seated beneath a tree in that same dreamlike garden. When Hana approached, he smiled and said, "This is the place where the things we've loved and released come to rest. But if they're gone, how can I see them?" she asked. "Because they're not truly gone," Etsu replied calmly. "They've only changed form. Now they live within you, like fragrance lives in the air even after the flower has faded." Hana woke at dawn, soft rays of sunlight brushing her face. She sat up slowly, still wrapped in the warmth of her dream, and saw the master preparing breakfast with unhurried grace. "Master, I dreamed of a garden. And was it beautiful?" "Very." Etsu nodded, his eyes twinkling with quiet understanding. "That garden is real, Hana. Every time you let go with love, a new flower grows there." The girl said nothing more. She simply took a spoonful of the steaming rice before her, and for the first time, she felt that every flavor had meaning, as if the simple act of being alive was, in itself, a gift. After breakfast, Hana stepped onto the narrow path that wound around the cabin. The stones were still damp with dew, and the cherry trees, silent and still, let their petals fall, as if letting go was their way of loving. Etsu walked behind her, his hands gently clasped behind his back. There was no hurry, no one was waiting, and that made each step feel like it held the weight of eternity. "Master, may I stay with you?" Hana asked, her gaze drifting toward the misty horizon. Etsu looked at her with tenderness and replied in a soft voice, "You may stay for as long as life brings you here. But remember, even that will be just a step." The girl lowered her head, feeling the truth behind his words. There was no forever, but there was now. And that now, if lived fully, was more than enough. "And you, Master? Have you ever been afraid to leave?" Etsu smiled. He bent down to pick up a fallen leaf and held it in front of her. "This leaf doesn't fall out of sadness. It falls because it is time. And when it touches the earth, it doesn't vanish. It transforms. It gives life to something else. Then you won't disappear either?" "No," Etsu replied. "No one truly does. Those who live with truth leave gentle footprints that even the wind cannot erase." The sun began to rise higher in the sky, bathing the forest in golden light. Hana closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, and felt something within her, deep and quiet, begin to bloom. The days passed with the calm of a stream with no destination. Hana and Etsu shared silence the way others share words. Sometimes they fetched water from the spring, other times they cooked rice or swept fallen leaves. Nothing ever felt urgent, and yet everything carried deep meaning. One afternoon, as the sky turned shades of orange and lilac, Hana found a smooth stone by the river. She held it in her hands, feeling its weight, its rounded shape, its warmth from the sun. "How long do you think it's been here?" she asked, showing it to the master. Etsu studied it carefully. "Perhaps centuries, or just a moment. For the stone, time doesn't matter, only being." Hana traced its surface with her fingers, thoughtful. "And us? Are we like the stone?" The master gently shook his head. "No, Hana. We are like the river. We never stop moving. Who you are today, you won't be tomorrow. And who you are tomorrow will also pass." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's a beautiful thing. Because once you understand you are just passing through, you stop fearing change and begin to dance with it." The river whispered at their feet, as if nodding in agreement. Hana remained quiet for a long time, watching the water continue on its way, clinging to nothing, never stopping. And for the first time, she understood. She didn't have to resist the current, only trust it. That night, before going to sleep, Hana stepped out to the threshold of the cabin. The sky was clear, studded with stars, and the moon hung silently, like a paper lantern in the vast sky. Master Etsu was seated on a straw mat, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Hana sat beside him without saying a word. The silence was so deep, one could almost hear the gentle heartbeat of the world. "Master," she said softly, "if everything passes, if nothing stays, then what's the point of loving?" Etsu opened his eyes slowly. His gaze was not an answer, it was a mirror. "Precisely because it passes, Hana. Because love is not possession, but a gift we give while we're here. To love something you cannot keep is the purest way to love." The master's words floated in the air like incense, wrapping everything in a sweetness too soft to touch. Hana didn't reply, but something inside her loosened, like an invisible thread coming undone. "And when I'm no longer here," she continued in a whisper, "will you remember this moment?" Etsu nodded. "I won't remember the words or the exact day, but I will remember the peace on your face and the heartbeat of this moment. What we live with presence is never lost. It becomes a seed." Then Hana rested her head on the master's shoulder, and the two of them gazed at the sky in silence, needing no more questions. They were simply there, simply passing through, and that was perfect. At dawn, the blackbird's song announced the return of the day. Mist danced among the trees, as if the earth itself were breathing dreams. Hana awoke slowly, wrapped in the peace of someone who has understood something, without needing to understand everything. Master Etsu was already outside, sweeping leaves from the path with his usual calm. When he saw her step out, he offered her a quiet smile, saying nothing. Yet somehow, he seemed to know it would be their last day together. Hana walked up to him and took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. "Today, I'll return to my village," she said softly. Etsu nodded, neither surprised nor saddened. "The path continues," he replied, "and you are ready." She lowered her gaze for a moment, trying to hold the scene in her heart. The scent of the forest, the soft scrape of the broom on stone, and the master's gaze, ancient, steady, and kind. "Thank you, master. I won't forget what I felt here." Etsu placed a warm, steady hand on her shoulder. "There's no need to remember. Just live with awareness. Every step, every laugh, every tear, all of it is part of your walk. You are not here to hold on, Hana. You are here to bloom, and then move on." Hana nodded. She was no longer just a child. Something within her had changed. Like water that finally understands its destiny is to reach the sea. And so, without drama or long goodbyes, she left the same way she had come. The wind caressed her face, and the world itself seemed to whisper in her ear, "Don't hold on. We are only passing through." And for the first time, that phrase didn't hurt. It was comfort. It was a gentle truth. It was the beginning of everything.